My name is Vincent Sebastian. I'm the producer and percussionist for Oyobi. We're here at the Nest where we recorded the Transcendence album. I am of Chilean Uruguayan background. I grew up, playing music, primarily percussion. Gradually over the years, after doing many gigs and putting on events, I started getting a lot into production because I wanted to be able to release my own music. And so that basically was after doing that for like 10 years and working up a way to produce music, so that we're here at the Nest, and that's led me to this Oyobi project. The original ideas was me wanting to bring machines into live performance. So Oyobi was based on this idea of using analog machines in cooperation with live instruments, and to bring some sort of performance into that. Obviously, I'm a percussionist, so what I've done for the past 10, 15 years is travel backwards and forwards to South America, and I'll sort of plant myself in a country for a month or two, and I'll study the rhythms from that part. I've done that all around South America, so I think that the love of those traditional rhythms, like how they are played in the area, has really influenced me, and I think that has been the basis of what Oyobi is. And I think when we compose music, we start with those rhythms. Like, it's always a first rhythm. Even if those rhythms are sort of implied more in the drum machines, we sort of start there, and then we build everything off that. So even the ones that may not sound so traditional, they all come from that basis of those rhythmic elements. And those rhythmic elements, if I was going to say what influences are, there's influences of obviously lots of Qvln influence, lots of the traditional sort of bata rhythms, and also lots of the folkloric rhythms of Cuba. Also Brazil, there's a song called Me Voy as well, which has got like a puya rhythm from Colombia, which I remember I studied in Colombia, in Bogota and Medellin for a while, and I learned lots of the Pacific rhythms and the Congo rhythms, and that influence came through in that song. There's, Q is half Brazilian and half Mexican, so I think there's a lot of influence with him there as well. And so we try to bring out those, those roots through our collaborations with people, but also with Danny and Adam, who play bass and all synthesizers and keys. They're also very experienced in the Latin world, so they've played in salsa bands, countless salsa bands, Latin bands, their whole life. Like Danny, I think, is the piano player for every salsa band in Sydney, and Adam is the bass player as well. So they've got strong roots in that here, and in their experience in South America as well. it's like we don't aim for that, but I think I personally can't help it. I think growing up in Australia to Chilean Uruguayan parents with a very strong culture at home, but also the fact that my family has been, was still very rooted in their culture. We spoke Spanish at home. They traveled frequently to South America, so I got to really develop a relationship with all my family over there and a love for the continent. So I carried that on after I finished, and I still, if I'm not in South America for a year or two, I feel like I get a bit homesick, even though I was born here in Australia. So part of my music has always been, and all my events have always been rooted in Latin culture. But because I am Australian, with that background, I think I try to appeal always to Australians. Obviously, I want the Latinos to feel like it's the proper thing. I want them to feel like, yeah, this is real. But at the same time, I want to make it contextual for Australia so that Australians also can feel that it is Sydney-based as well. So I'm trying to play with that, the mixture of Latinness and being in Australia and trying to create something which is relevant for here.
Yo, Rocket, this song right here is called Bacino. Bacino is smack. Bacino Batuki.
I think that's just been a natural progression of my exploration. And also I think going again to being a percussionist, because I think that's where it all stems for me, because the drums in all the traditions that I've studied in always come from a tradition which is, which stems from Africa, but is very rooted in South America, and that mix of, African, indigenous, European mix, the beautiful mixes in South America. And so in my explorations in music, they've always almost melded together with what the spiritual side of it is. I think the drums are just united with that in some way. And I think personally as well for myself, I think, I studied in uni, I studied psychology as well. And I think I've always been interested in the mind and how the mind works and how we as human beings see the world through our minds and how we see reality. And I think that interest has sort of led me throughout my life also through various religions and traditions, and trying to find what is the common thing about them all. I spent a lot of time through my 20s interested in Buddhism and spending time in monasteries and speaking with monks and meditating a lot. And I think that gave me like a strong basis in exploring the mind while I was doing my psychology as well. But then on top of that, my mother was a naturopath, and so I grew up around a lot of esoteric peoples, I guess. Lots of tarot readers, crystal healers, and Reiki, masseuses, and numerologists, and my mother was always trading ideas with these people. So I got to experience a lot of that. I remember learning crystal healing when I was 16 with one of my mum's friends, and interested in crystals and how energy worked, and being given books about that, and being given lessons, and learning to read tarot, which is something that I've sort of come back to throughout my life, and something which is a very part of my life as well. Like all those esoteric things have always interested me. So I think when you take sort of my natural inclination towards psychology, the mind, and spirituality, and the musical side, which is the percussion, which is very much rooted in that already, like from the African indigenous tradition. I mean, that the drums are always rooted in a religion, a spiritual context. Like you can't separate it really. So you put them together, and I think that's my interest in spirituality, in religion, in the mind, and in music. I think now in Oyobi, they're just starting to all come together as like one thing. I think for me, success is ultimately about full expression, I think. Regardless of what happens outside with the music, obviously there's elements that success is, you know, being able to perform to a bunch of people who actually are touched by the music and who enjoy the music and who maybe get something out of the music. But from a personal aspect, I think for me, as long as I'm expressing what's happening, what's important to me, or what's happening internally, or musically my interest, if that's being expressed fully, then that's a success for me.
Dame tu alma, dame tu sudor, suelta tu cuerpo, respira tu dolor. A los muertos.
Yes and no. Yes, because I think I always saw myself creating music and evolving. So I think I'll be lying if I said that I didn't actually. It felt like it was an intuitive goal that this would be happening. There was always this thing that, you know, that's what I wanted to do. Like when I started producing, like, you know, when I first got realized I wanted to make music on a computer and produce 15 years ago, was because I thought one day I'm going to be producing bands. Okay. And so the progression seems totally natural now that I look at it, but how it's come out, the fact that there's a project called Oyobi and it's with these guys who I absolutely love, and the fact that we're here in the nest in Surrey Hills in the middle of Sydney, beautiful city, and that we're doing all these things, no, you can't really plan how it's going to work out. It has a lot to do with my study as well. I think through my PhD, which I'm currently finishing, my PhD pretty much looks at, to put it in simple words, how does music heal? Pretty much, and part of my research has been looking at sort of ritual music and how music is used ritually in sort of cultures to bring about transformation, to bring about healing and changes in people psychologically and bodily and emotionally. And so transcendence is sort of going beyond the limits of the self that we are every day and transcending that to a true self. So I'm very much interested in how this happens, transformation happens, and what that means for the human, and how that happens in music.